Morning, everybody. Happy Monday, May 6th. I hope everybody's having a great day. I'm going to try to look a little bit more at the camera as much as I can. I hope you guys get used to my face. It's right here. Anyway, so today is Monday. It's the start of a brand new week. I hope everybody's anxious for the work week. Hopefully you guys are enjoying your jobs. Sometimes, Monday can be, I hate the Mondays. But I love my job, so I'm lucky in that way, and I hope you guys are just as lucky as I am. So today, I was thinking about this. I had a topic all ready to go on for today, and one of the people that I follow on Twitter posted something, and I thought it was a really, really important thing to read off and talk about. So here we are with Coffee with Steve. Let's go ahead and do the intro, shall we? That's the wrong screen. There we go. Okay. So, thank you again for joining me today. So I do follow several different people on Twitch, on Twitter, on Facebook. That all kind of prompt some of the ideas of things that I want to talk about. And today is no exception. I came across this article that was posted, and it's from a website called thefatherlessgeneration.wordpress.com. And it's really just kind of, they have a running set of statistics about fatherless homes. And I grew up, and the fatherless home is kind of a misnomer in a way, because it doesn't necessarily mean that the dad is not actually there. It doesn't mean that the kid doesn't have a father. It just kind of means maybe the father's a bit more absent, or maybe isn't necessarily a participant, right? I mean, the dad exists, otherwise the kid wouldn't be here. So there is a father. It's just that the father has decided, for one reason or another, to not assist in the rearing of the child, either through leaving outright. Some of them completely leave. Some of them just don't father the kids. Some of them, you can have a situation where, two parents are living in the same household, but the dad is just not being an active participant in rearing the child. And that's kind of a very common scenario, I think, as more and more men are relegated to this role of pocketbook, just pay for everything, and not as involved in the rearing of the child. And there are some men that are, it's fantastic to see some men that do get very active and are very much a part of their child's role. And I was reading through, doing a little bit of research for today, and it was discovered something like 80%, or they were looking at the effects of men who stick around for the childbirth. And they found that if you actually observe the childbirth and become, have a connection with the baby immediately, that there's a higher probability of the men staying around and of the child having a good, solid upbringing as a result, because the men just typically tend to stay around just from that single act of being there during the birth. So it's interesting. I mean, I don't know that it could be a correlation without causation, possibly, because, it could just be that the guy wanted the same person who would be predisposed to be there would obviously be somebody who really wants to participate in the kids' lives, so much so that you want to be there as part of the birth. So there may be some correlation there, not necessarily causation, but it's still an interesting little statistic, and I don't have exactly the numbers. Maybe if I can tease it out again. I just was going through stuff, just kind of trying to come up with different points to talk about, and that was that was kind of an interesting one. That typically men who are there for the childbirth tend to be more active in the child's role, or in the child rearing. So let's just go through some statistics here from the fatherless generation. So 63% of youth suicides are from fatherless homes, which is 5 times the average. Okay, so 63% of youth suicides are from fatherless homes. 90% of all homeless, and runaway children are from fatherless homes. 90% of the homeless are runaway kids from fatherless homes. 85% of all children who show behavior disorders come from fatherless homes. So 85% of all the children who have some sort of behavioral disorder. 80% of rapists and anger problems come from fatherless homes. And let me just say, when it comes to anger problems, like I grew up in what you would consider a fatherless home. I know who my dad is. I talk to him somewhat regularly now that I'm grown up. We kind of exchange pleasantries mostly on like my birthdays or anniversaries or Christmas or what have you. But he was definitely not an active participant in my life, and I definitely struggle with anger issues. It's just a constant battle for me, and I work very hard at trying to maintain some equilibrium in my life. And luckily, I have a very patient wife. She tends to put up with my anger a little bit more than probably some women might. I definitely think that there's a connection there between guys who continue to have anger issues, and if you come from a fatherless home, there's a very good chance that you'll have some anger issues. 71% of all high school dropouts come from fatherless homes. So 71% of all high school dropouts come from a fatherless home. The father factor in education. Fatherless children are twice as likely to drop out of school. Children with fathers who are involved are 40% less likely to repeat a grade in school. So if you have a father, you're 40% less likely to repeat. Children and fathers who are involved are 70% less likely to drop out of school. Children with fathers who are involved are more likely to get A's in school, right? And I think this has to come from, if you look at parenting roles as they've come about, and I'm not going to try to make a judgment as to, at least I'm not going to make a judgment on this channel as to whether or not this is right or wrong. But it definitely has come to be some gender roles there, right? Women tend to be the nurturers. Men tend to be the not necessarily stern ones, but the ones that are imparting some sort of direction, shall we say. Like, this is what you should do with your life, okay? Women tend to be like, you can do anything, right? My child can do anything, can grow up to be anything. And guys, we can say that about our kids too, but also we're like, you need to get a job. You need to get an education. You need to like go through all these things. And not to say that women don't want that for their kids too, but it's just men are a bit more demanding about it, right? Like, you need to do this. And we tend to be the one that's kind of the guardrails, right? Men tend to be the guardrails for their kids about, this is the path you should take, at least to be successful. And we know this because we've gone through it, right? We're the ones that go out and try to, the dependency is on us to be successful so that the family can rely upon us for income, for housing, for food, for everything as far as financial success, right? So we know how to navigate, in general, we know how to navigate those waters a little bit more commonly. And there's more and more women that are getting into this and starting to find their way through as well. But just typically, men have been that person in the child's rearing that kind of helps direct success. Okay, these are the parameters by which you as a person have to follow if you're going to be a successful individual in society. And without that, right, a mother can have all the best of intentions, but if she doesn't have that kind of experience, it's hard to pull on, right? It's hard to find something to pull on to say this is how to be successful. And again, here, I'm very thankful for my mom, who, again, I had basically a fatherless home, and my mom was able to basically set me up on the right path because she was blazing that trail herself, right? She was finding a way, and to her credit, she didn't go on welfare and suddenly decide to be a stay-at-home mom that just kind of soaks up from tax from the government, right? She didn't just accept the welfare check all the time. She went out and got a job. She pursued a career. And during times where it was not at all popular for a woman to be in the workforce and be a single parent, a single mom in the workforce, and she really, really blazed that trail. So because she had that experience to draw from, she was constantly teaching me these things about how to be successful, about how to be grounded, about how to have success in life. And despite the fact that my dad wasn't there. So I'm one of the very lucky few, I think, that has really had that influence in my life despite not having a father. I think it's pretty rare. So, so going back to children and fathers who are involved are more likely to enjoy school and engage in extracurricular activities. Again, guys are trying to promote social networking, right? That's kind of the thing. As you go and you do these things, you become a part of a team. You go and you try to have that success as part of a team, and that helps build the camaraderie. Those are the types of things that men, even somewhat instinctively, are saying you need to go do. You need to go do these things, be a part of these activities in order to build up the social connections. And we do that because we know that in order for us to be successful, again, successful at life, you have to have connections. You have to know how to work within a team. And that means everybody kind of knows that, but how do you teach that? And forcing your kids to engage in those extracurricular activities is one of those ways that you do it. Okay, 75% of all adolescent patients in chemical abuse centers come from fatherless homes. 75% of all adolescent patients in chemical abuse centers come from fatherless homes. 70% of youths in state-operated institutions come from fatherless homes. And this has to do with drug abuse and alcohol abuse. 85% of all youths in prison come from fatherless homes. Even after controlling for income, youths in father-absent households still had significantly higher odds of incarceration than those in mother-father families. Youths who never had a father in the household experienced the highest odds. A 2002 Department of Justice survey of 7,000 inmates revealed that 39% of jail inmates lived in a mother-only household. That seems a little low. They need to have a larger survey, I think. Approximately 46% of jail inmates in 2002 had a previously incarcerated family member. So that's another one, right? Dads that commit crime can't really be a father, and so the cycle continues. Let's see if we can find some more statistics. Here we go. 43% of U.S. children live without a father. 43% of U.S. children live without their father. That's 43%, almost half of the kids, almost half of children, 43%. That's unbelievable. 90% of homeless and runaway children are from fatherless homes. 90%. 71% of pregnant teenagers lack a father. So 71% of pregnant teenagers. 63% of youth suicides are from fatherless homes. 85% of children who exhibit behavioral disorders come from fatherless homes. 90% of adolescent repeat arsonists live with only their mother. 90% of repeat arsonists. Wow. 71% of high school dropouts come from fatherless homes. 75% of adolescent patients in chemical abuse centers, right, fatherless. 70% of juveniles in state-operated institutions have no father. 85% of youths in prison grow up in a fatherless home. I mean, it's just staggering. It's funny because I'll hear this debate like, you don't need dads in the home. I'll hear that. I do hear that. There's especially a certain segment of people, I'm not going to be pointing any fingers, but that say men are useless. Why do we even need men? I mean, you need a woman needs a man like a fish needs a bicycle, right? That's the famous saying. And it's really, really disappointing. And unfortunately, I think it's come to affect the children in the home too, right? Okay, so with that being said, I thought I'd kind of turn my attention to what are some of the reasons guys are leaving? Because I think that's another thing that we need to consider is why is it that men are leaving? Is it just a cultural thing? Like, is it cultural? Is it a newer thing? Is it because it does seem like it's a newer, more modern problem, where guys were expected in the past to rear the child a little bit too. Like, yes, have the mom take care of the child, but the guys need to be there, at least be there. And nowadays, it seems like there's a lot more of a reason for a guy to leave. Because why should he stick around? What purpose does it serve? So one of the things that as I was going through and looking for different reasons why men leave is because in a lot of ways they're kind of being pushed out. They're being right from the get-go, from what they call the fourth trimester, right? The first 3 months right after a child is born. There's a push for the baby to bond with the mother, right? You've got to get the baby bonding with the mom. But there isn't that same push for baby to bond with father in all cases, right? In some cases, in those rare few cases, well, I shouldn't say rare few, but in the by and large majority of cases, okay, men are kind of pushed out. As far as for that first initial baby needs to bond with mom. Sometimes it's okay for, let the dad hold the baby, but then he's got to go right back to mom, right? And it's just kind of this cultural thing that we've developed that baby needs to bond with mom because mom is the nurturer, right? Dad is the provider. So dads kind of almost see their role as being one of on the sidelines, just provide and not necessarily be an active participant. So it's kind of this disruption in the early beginning of, baby needs her mom or his mom. And then boys grow up looking for that mom connection that they never had, because there's always this not enough nurturing, right? There's most of us didn't get enough love and nurture from our moms, who were influenced by the culture that taught importance of independence, right? So we're taught to let the kids become more and more independent, and so because they kind of push the kids away a little bit to go be independent, sometimes there's not as much nurturing that actually goes on. And so if you do that too early, the baby becomes more and more needy. And that can actually cause kind of the inverse effect, right? You have a baby that gets really, really needy because they were pushed away for a little bit. So the baby arrives and dad loses the mommy that he loved, right? Because now mom is spending all this time with the baby and not spending any time with the dad. So the dad is kind of being pushed out, not just in the life of the baby, but in the life of the mother. And the focus becomes on the baby, right? My wife and I have actually had this conversation, and she says, to her credit, the mother and the father actually come first. The baby comes second. And a lot of people may not agree with that. I understand that there's, the baby is very, very important. But if the relationship between the mother and the father does not stay strong, then it's going to affect that relationship, and there's a higher probability that the dad is going to leave, or possibly in some cases the mom's going to leave. But typically, if you don't continue to share that bond between the mother and father, regardless of whether or not you even have a baby, right? You need to continue that connection. If you just suddenly ignored each other because there was something there, and it doesn't even have to be a kid, it could be something else. If there's suddenly kind of this divide, this split between the mother and father, well, of course, he's going to start to feel left out. And I think far by and large, it's the guys that are going to be leaving because the connection is between the mom and the baby. And we even kind of promote this in the justice system, right? It's like if there is any sort of familial dispute, it's almost always going to be the mom that wins in that circumstance. She can affect, tear the father out of the life of the child. And the court system to now has been a willing participant in that. And that's really, really unfortunate. Mom heals some of her childhood loss through loving connection with her child. Okay, so sometimes that's a little bit of why there's an extra imbalance there between fathers making that connection with the baby, is because mom is very much on, like, I've got to do everything I can to make sure that this is a loving connection, and I don't want any sort of interference. Okay, it's me and the baby. The more successful the mothering, the more the dad pulls away. So the more successful that the mom is, right, the more capable it shows that the mom is able to take care of the baby, the father starts to look at this and say, well, there's no reason for me to be here. There's no need for me to be a part of this because she's doing a terrific job. All I have to do is just go make income and just provide, right? So there's a lot less of that connection. So the more dad pulls away, the more mom turns her attention to the child. Okay, so it starts to become this running, reciprocating problem, right? As she becomes a successful mom and he is no longer being a successful dad, she starts to, and there's that break apart in the relationship between the mother and father. Well, she's going to start to turn her attention more and more and more into helping the baby, right? Making sure that the baby's good. All right. So that kind of is like this snowball until eventually he just feels like he has no other option to leaving, because I'm not really a part of this. I'm not a part of the mother's life. I'm not a part of the baby's life. They're clearly doing better alone. Why should I even be here? I've got better things to do. Okay. I can focus more on my job, on my career, on maybe, during that time, he starts to feel abandoned himself and he finds some other place to go for that attention. And I'm not saying that that's, that's an excuse. I don't think that it's ever an excuse, but I think that that's kind of one of the reasons that might exist there. So thanks to all three of you guys for watching today. I appreciate it. All three of you. This is obviously going to get posted up as a video, and I hope that you guys who do watch this a little bit later find this topic interesting, because I think it's a problem that needs to be addressed in our society. We're not doing enough to fix it. We really are not. I think it's becoming a little bit more obvious because of, so there's the men's rights activists, and there's some really kooky ones out there. But I think they are starting to make some waves insofar as providing some statistics, right? And providing some sort of voice to some of these issues. So I think it is starting to become a little bit more identified, especially because as the numbers keep getting larger and larger. But there definitely seems to be some sort of this pushback still that says you don't need a guy, you don't need a man. Like, women are just as capable as men as rearing children. And I'm not saying it's a matter of ability. I don't think that it's a matter of ability or desire or anything like that. I think it's just a matter of different perspectives to help impart an opinion on the child's rearing, right? To help guide that child as they're growing up. Having those different perspectives, an array of perspectives, rather than just a single perspective, helps to kind of put those guardrails up on to drive the kid towards success. Without that, I think I said it really well at the beginning, right? Without that guidance from somebody who has navigated those waters on how to become successful, then where is he going to get it? Or where is she going to get it? Where is that baby going to get that type of information? And if the mom has been, just kind of never gone out in the workforce, never really been out in, never really had a job, never, always relied upon somebody else to provide, and then if the family does tear apart and the dad goes away, you've got child support, perhaps alimony, you got the state paying for things. So the financial situation is still taken care of while the father leaves. And so she can still be self-sufficient. She can still care for the baby. She can be independent without that need for the father. And we've come to a point in our society where that's a possibility, where moms don't have to have dads in the lives of the babies. And this is becoming, now we're starting to see the effects of that. We're starting to see what happens when you remove the father from the home, and it doesn't look good, right? So what we have to start to ask ourselves is, what are we going to do about this? We continuously point the fingers at the fathers and say, you should be there for your kids. You should be the ones there. But at the same time, I'm asking you guys, I'm asking everybody, what is society's role in this? We got to this point where this was an acceptable situation. And for a lot of people if we try to say something against that culture, it's like there's a huge pushback, right? If you say we're going this direction with our culture and we're seeing some very negative side effects, maybe we should pump the brakes. You're going to get a ton of pushback for that, right? Like you're going to get all sorts of labels because you don't necessarily believe that this is necessarily the best situation. So I would love to see our society kind of get back a little bit to that mother-father scenario, get back to that loving family dynamic where dad and mom comes first, the baby comes second, but is obviously very, very important. I'm not saying that you just neglect the kid, okay, in order to spend time together, but you've got to maintain that relationship. You have to keep that relationship going. And I think that more and more our society is accepting of that not being the situation. There's not as much, it used to be shameful. It's absolutely shameful for a woman to raise her kids by herself. And I don't necessarily think that was a good thing insofar as shaming the mom. But at the same time, it also acted as kind of this buffer against the feeling, the encroaching feeling that it's okay, right? It's perfectly fine. You don't need to have the dad in life, right? That's a different scenario. To me, there's a difference between saying, I don't need him, I don't need no guy, versus, you know what? He left, and that's not your fault. It's a terrible situation, and it's not good. Right? If that's the case where like he just leaves and she doesn't feel good about it and he doesn't feel good about it, like at least there's some sort of angst about that problem. And that should be there. That drive to be a family together and have support for the baby on both sides is monumentally important. And I think in our society we are consistently growing towards this. Guys are not necessary. Guys are not needed, despite the fact that we have all of these statistics that prove completely the opposite. Okay? And in our culture, if you start to say, we need to have more men in the lives of kids, the only thing that you're going to get is, well, that's the dad's fault. That's the guy's fault. Not, we as a society are starting to make this acceptable. We should probably stop making it acceptable, right? That's the problem. We're making it an acceptable situation, an acceptable scenario. It's okay. And that's the heart of the problem, in my opinion. Because since it's okay in society, dads are like, okay, well, this is how it's supposed to be now, I guess. I thought I was supposed to be a dad, but I mean, I'm looking at the way society reacts to all these fatherless kids, and it's like, I guess if the mom is good enough to handle the baby, why do I need to be an active participant? As long as I can just pull out my pocketbook and pay for the stuff the baby needs, or, pay child support maybe. And, a lot of times guys don't even do that because they're just like, hey, she's just going to have to do it herself. It's an unacceptable situation. Men are culpable in this. Men are definitely culpable for leaving. But at the same time, there's like this growing societal pressure for this to be normalized and okay. And as long as we continue down that path, it's going to continue. It's going to still be a problem, and it's not going to solve itself. So anyway, okay, that's another heavy subject for today. Thank you again for everybody who's watching. I want to thank you so much for being a part of this channel. It's still kind of growing. We're still trying to get more and more viewers, more people watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this topic. I know it's I'm going down all these real serious paths. I'm going to have to come up with something a little bit more lighthearted next time. So anyway, thanks for watching, everybody. And I'm looking forward to seeing your guys' comments in the comment section below after this video gets posted. So thanks so much.